So good day. We're learning Pedic Tes Vav. Is it? Yeah, 15 or 16. Sorry, Tes Zayin. 16 in Maimer Hechaltzu the Rashab. And briefly, we've learned till now the ugliness and devastation caused by jealousy and envy, which leads to hatred, and that was discussed at length in the previous chapter. Now the Rashab is going to bring it back to the theme in this mimer, which is the sinas chinam. This mimer is not about jealousy, and it's not about other ugly attributes and character traits, but it's focusing primarily on sinas chinam. But in order to understand sinas chinam, goes off to this tangent, that tangent, this point. Let's look inside and read together. V'hinei kol hadvarim hanal, again, chapter 15. All of the previous mentioned issues, yesh sheheim begasus uvedakus. You find them in various forms, some in a more coarse way, and some in a more delicate way. Each one based on its quality and its level in regard to serving Hashem. Sometimes the issue could be so delicate, they're so delicate that you don't even realize that you have this issue. It's a very subtle issue. The Rashab says, but guess what? It does exist in your soul. It's deep in the recesses of your soul. Dahainu shechoishev she'enei bichlal hadvarim hanal. Although one thinks that this issue is not amongst the bad character traits that we mentioned in chapters 14 and 15. The Rebbe says, but you should know that these delicate issues that seem very subtle, I like the word subtle better, that one has, is part of those ugly, coarse character traits. And this issue, he says, is worse than any one particular bad character trait. Why? Because one particular character trait is an individual issue. Let's say anger. It's one area you have to refine. Fine. So in other words, if you look at the specifics, then each one is kind of independent of the other, and you know what to identify. I have an issue with anger. Go for anger management courses, right? I have certain, infatuations. Go to such a therapist. But there's an issue that's kind of the father figure of all of these things. That's what the Rebbe is getting at. Let's back into the text. And the individual character issues are not similar to the overall issue. Which is, it is not as powerful. You hear that? He's saying that a specific character flaw is not as powerful as a general character flaw. He says like this. if you have a certain character issue, a specific one, it doesn't mean you're going to fall into another one. In other words, if you have an anger problem, it doesn't mean you're going to become a Baal Gaiva with conceit and boast. It's two separate issues. And vice versa. If you have a problem with Gaiva, with Yesh's, ego, conceit, haughtiness, it doesn't mean that you have an issue with anger. Mashenki and sinas chinam. This is not true regarding sinas chinam, baseless hatred. Shehu klal hakoilel klolis hasitra achre. It is a generality, it's an encompassing midah, which embodies the sitra achre as a whole. In other words, Moshe, if you want to see the sitra achre in its full garb, look at sinas chinam. When you look at anger, and you look at gaiva, and you look at taiva, achila, or other taivas, it's one particular area. You don't see the full face of the sitra achre. You want to see the full face of the sitra achre that Rashab says here in the Maimer. That is when you confront sinas chinam, or you have sinas chinam. And it says further, Shehu inyan hapirud ve'eschalkos. He repeats what he said many times in the Maimer. This is characterized by division and separation. V'hu moked the sibas kol habitzoros kanal. Rashab argues and positions this is the source, mokar, the siba, and the cause. Now this is a very interesting statement and needs, I think, thought. Can we prove, Hillel, that sinas chinam is the cause root of anger, is the cause root of ego, is the cause root of taiva, isser? Can we? What is the logic there? Because you don't like someone's nose, because you have this sinah to someone, therefore it ultimately leads to anger. It ultimately leads to taiva. That's what he says here. And he's saying that, he's saying that sinas chinam could be deep, it could be so disguised that it's so subtle, but there's a sinas chinam inside deep in the heart, which expresses itself through the various different particular character flaws. I'm just reading what it says. Interesting. V'hu ha'hepech u'menagid l'chlolus. L'chlolus, can't read. Shem Hashem. Canal, yes. Sinas chinam is the antithesis of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei Ukumashi Yizbod, as we'll explain later. So we'll leave it for later. But remember, the Maimer begins with the pasuk Hechaltzu lochem nikmas Hashem, right? Take revenge of the Midyanim, and it uses the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. So in the beginning of the Maimer, the Rashab focused on why Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why not Elokim, Moshe? Take revenge from Elokim. Take revenge from Kael. It doesn't say that. Nikmas Hashem Yud Kei, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Rashab pointed out at that time briefly, and he says he'll explain further, more elaborately, it looks like, that the particular issue of sinas chinam directly opposes and touches Yud Kei Vav Kei. And Yud Kei Vav Kei creates the being, right? What's the difference, Chevra, between the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei and Shem Elokim, Shem Kael? In one word, the difference is between the creative force or the manifested force. In terminologies that we've learned in other places, Memale Kol Almin or Sever Kol Almin, the particulars or the generality. Yud Kei Vav Kei creates, makes it possible. Before you can deal with particulars, you need to have the creation, the subject matter, the ability, the fact that it exists. That's Yud Kei Vav Kei. Sinas Chinam is the antithesis to Yud Kei Vav Kei. It goes against Yud Kei Vav Kei, which means it seeks to obliterate the existence of man, healthy man, the wholesome man. It seeks to wipe away that Hashem created a human being on earth for a positive purpose. That's Sinas Chinam. Because right, what's Sinas Chinam? Sinas means hate. And not just hate, baseless hate, Chinam. So when you think about that, there's no rhyme and logic, rhyme and reason. It's illogical. What are you hating for? Because he doesn't have your color hair? Because he doesn't have your pocketbook? What are you, out of your mind? And you know the famous Gemara with Rabbi Elazar ben Durdai over there? And he said, I think Elazar ben Durdai, right? He says, he was ugly, very ugly. Facial features, disgusting. The other Tana says, ich, I can't look at you. He turns around and he says, Leich le'uman shosa asini. Go to my master, the craftsman, God, who made me. What do you want from me? I was born, I came out this way. It's very powerful. Very powerful piece of Gemara. It ties into this whole topic of bullying, which unfortunately came to the table the last 2 weeks with the suicide of that young Lubavitcher boy. Bullying. What are you bullying for? What are you bullying for? You don't like the way he looks. He's fat, he's skinny, she's fat, she's skinny, she's talkative, she's loud, she's a nudge. The Abish to make, we have to work on refining ourselves. But at the end of the day, one person has a nature to talk more, another person has a nature to talk less. Another person, is able to control their weight easier. Another person isn't. There's no room for this concept of bullying. And I was telling yesterday someone who's much younger than I, but we dialogue. Lubavitcher, a successful person, a very fine person, how when this issue came to the table in the last 2 weeks, it just reminded me, and look, I'm almost 65, how I was bullied in first grade. I remember it now. I'm an adult. I have grandchildren, and it's in there, and it doesn't go away. And I know who it is. I know what he said, and it caused me to leave the yeshiva to go to another yeshiva, which was the best thing that I did. I went to the Lubavitcher yeshiva instead of Oli Torah, which were, So in hindsight, min hashamayim, that was the kick in the butt, excuse the expression, that I got to get out of this yeshiva and go to the other yeshiva and make a life, But at the time, it's like, and I want to say, since we're on the topic just for a second, okay, so now I'm going to go and take him to court. I'm going to go and humiliate him. No. This is where you have to be mature. A wrong was done, and you go on. And I'm not saying this for everything. I want to make it clear. I'm not saying this. Someone's abused and if they're brought, to the authorities, the Rabbanim support that. Again, I don't know enough about the topic, but I'm just saying that the Rashab is talking about Helem Hora. Helem Hora is something that ever since I learned it in my younger years in Chassidus, when I started to learn Chassidus, it's something that kind of, is dwelling and always, and this is really what the Avodah is, like to refine yourself where you work out those deep issues. It's mamish, it's mamish therapy. That's what it is, getting into your gut and somehow working it out. And if you don't work it out, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. Now, working it out doesn't mean always getting rid of it. Like I say, I still feel the bullying deep inside. But Baruch Hashem, I've done so much in my life that's overshadowed it, and life goes on, you know. But you have to know the score. If you don't know the score, it's a problem. And the same, and because then you understand when you get angry why you're getting angry. When you have gaiva, why you have gaiva, on and on. Now the Rashab is saying here in the Maimer Hechaltzu that the cause for all this is sinas chinam. Now, you understand what I'm having a difficult with accepting it is to say, I have sinas chinam, therefore when I'm angry, it's because of my sinas chinam. I don't have sinas chinam. I really don't. Even some people that have done terrible things against me, I forgive him and I go on. It doesn't mean I'm hugging and kissing them and looking for their advice. But it's about Hareini Moichel every night, at Yom Kippur, right? So what I'm saying is, but the Rashab is saying that if you have a bad midah, somehow it stems from some kind of sinas chinam. So this needs to be, for me at least, I need to still clarify it. If anyone has any thoughts, I would love to hear. You know, how is it that sinas chinam is the root? He says hamokar vasiba, the root and the cause for the particular blemish, the particular character flaw. That's what he says here. Let's continue. And Kiim Yaseh es Malachta Elavid is Hashem Kedeboy Lemeve. He quotes a Gemara in Ksubas. The Gemara there, I'll read quickly the note here just because it makes it clear. As befits for him. What does it mean you have to serve as it befits for him? This is used as a translation of the wording of the Maimon that resembles what the Gemara says. The meaning of the phrase is evident from the story related in the source, the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan Zakai chanced upon the daughter of Nagdimon ben Gurion, who was living in a state of abject poverty. Rabbi Yochanan was amazed because her father had been renowned as his wealth. He was very wealthy. The Talmud explains that she was reduced to the state, to this state, because her father did not donate to charity. The Talmud then questions the statement because it is known that Nagdimon gave charity profusely. In resolution, it explains that he did not give Kideboy Leilem Eved as befitting his vast wealth. Similarly, each person is required to employ the potentials he has been granted in proportion to the extent he has been endowed with them. So that expression, Velvel, Kideboy Leilem Eved, is from the Gemara. And Chassidus brings it a lot. In other words, are you really doing as much as Hashem has given you, blessed you with? Yeah, you're doing a little bit, fine. But really? You give to charity. Nagdimon, you gave charity, you gave tzedakah. But Nagdimon, you're so wealthy. There's someone here in Brooklyn, a friend of my father's, a good friend for many, many years. It is a very, very wealthy man. My father once said to him, you know, you have millions of dollars, hundreds of millions. He turned to my father and he says, no, I'm already a billionaire. Okay? And my father said to him, I know you give tzedakah, and you give a lot of tzedakah. I want you to prove to me you give 10% of the $1 billion. You're giving tzedakah, a lot of tzedakah, because God has blessed you. But are you giving a meiser? Let's be honest. Let's do a calculation. And my father's from Romania. He's a European Jew. He never landed in America. He still talks the way he speaks in Europe. Show me. You don't show me, you're a bluffer. Your whole tzedakah is a big bluff. And if I had that money, I would give so much more. So this is the concept that we have in Mevah. Let's go further. And working on these issues to refine those natural tendencies to become better. Tzorech lechafish b'chipus acher chipus l'or haner. This is from the Gemara in by the way, the Gemara in Psachim. When you search with the candle or an air, the Gemara says has to be checking in the nooks and crannies. And the Gemara says, chipus apus chipus, searching after searching. So the Rashab says, this issue that we're discussing here will not come just from, I'm doing tshuva. This needs psychotherapy, therapy. This needs avodah. This needs, and it's uncomfortable. And when you, but that's what it requires. L'or haner. It's not something that's obvious on the outside. It's l'or haner. And the Rashab says further in the text, and he says, Neir Hashem nishmas Adam. The candle of God is of man, is the soul of man. V'livdek bechurim v'dakim zdokim. Giving you the ability, because we have the neshama, to search in the nooks and crannies, now to find every individual iota of no good. They truly prevent you from true service. And doesn't allow you to ultimately refine your character properly. And when you find the character flaw, to obliterate it, to get rid of it, to burn it, completely from your soul, then you will go on a straight, sure path. When you daven with humility, and you refine your character, and then your Torah mitzvahs will be the proper way. Kisser. Sinas chinam liyosei klal u'mokar. You see? Sinas chinam, look how he says in the Kisser, in the synopsis. Being that it is the underlying source of all bad midos, all negative character traits. It requires much searching, and complete eradication, utterly destroyed. And we have the ability because of the neshama. So this, you would think, is a chapter in a Maimer Chassidus that's very Musar-like. So first of all, like I've said many times, early Chassidim learned Musar too. The only thing is that Chassidus, Chabad Chassidus, and Chassidus Bechlal puts the emphasis on Chassidus, but not that you shouldn't learn Musar. That's number one. Number two, if you really pay attention, he's coming about it here not from a moral, ethical point, like, hey, you want to be a good boy, clean up your act. That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about, Mesilas Yesharim, Nekiyos, cleanliness, orderliness. That's the Mesilas Yesharim approach, based on the Musar approach. Feed your animals before yourself. Don't be a balgaiva, right? I had this Hebrew grammar teacher in high school, Rabbi Lezevnik. Groinom Lezevnik was his name. There's someone in Eish Kodesh Moshe who used to study some of his teachings, and he shared it with me when I was there. I forget the person now, but because of that person, I wrote about Rabbi Lezevnik, who was my teacher in high school at Lubavitch Yeshiva here. So when I came back to America, at one time, I said, I have to look at I think it was around, must have been 2018, when this person in your community reminded me about him. I forgot about him. And then I said to myself, he's still alive? Lo and behold, he was alive. He was over 100 years old. And one Sunday, I was driving, in the morning, no traffic here in Flatbush, And Baruch Hashem was Chayin Das. I said, wait a minute, I gotta go see Rabbi Lezevnik. So I just drove, instead of driving home, I drove to East 9th and Avenue N, off Coney Island Avenue, parked my car, unannounced, went up, and he had the shul downstairs, first floor, and he lived upstairs. And he's there with an aide, and it's him. I recognize him. I asked him if he recognizes me. He said he didn't recognize me. I told him my name. He remembered something of the name. I think it was 102 at the time, I think. So I said to him, Rabbi Lezevnik. And he told me interesting things, not for now, it's for another time, but he told me his relationship with the Rebbe. He was hired in 1946 when the yeshiva opened in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is between Crown Heights and Williamsburg. He was hired as a Hebrew teacher by the Rebbe's brother, Rashag. So, and he survived the war. He was a survivor. And he was a Navardiker. Now, Navardik is heavy Musser. You know that, right? And he, short little man. He had this, goatee. He just had all the elements of a Navardiker. And I say to him, after listening, with his aide in the house, I say to Lezevnik, would you do me a favor? I want to take you in my car and just drive over 20 minutes. Take us 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, no traffic, to 770. I promise you, as soon as you'll walk in, there'll be hundreds of people my age, a little younger, a little older, that will swarm around you because they can't believe I didn't tell them this, they can't believe you're alive. And you were their teacher, and you were an excellent teacher. It's like a piece of history in the making. And you're a Navardiker, and you taught Lubavitch Yeshiva. And he looked up at me, and then I saw that the cup arbet, his head is working. He was weak in his chair, but the cup of garbet, the cup worked. He said to me, "Nein." I'm repeating the way it sounded. Nein, no. Das is Gaiva. That's Gaiva. And that was the classic Navardic answer. Chabad wouldn't answer it that way. A real Litvak wouldn't answer it that way. They have different answers. But the way he said it with those few words it just took me back into the Navardic 1910. You're going to bring me so people will center around me. That's Gaiva. So I end with that story just to say that there is a Navardic way of dealing with these issues, which is holy and beautiful. And then there's a Hasidic way. And then there's a Chabad way within Hasidus. The Rashab here, I think if you think about it, and it needs more thought, as I said earlier, how can we prove, that Sinas Chinam is the core and the cause for Midas Ros, anger, Gaiva, Taiva, whatever. But regardless, the way he puts it together is Chassidus. And that we should never, the world we live in is one that on one hand, it's like everyone's holding hands, or there's more of that, which is wonderful and important. But at the same time, Chassidus is Chassidus. Musar is Musar. It's two different approaches. And to whitewash what Chassidus is, in my humble opinion, is wrong. Chassidus is a certain style, which is a different style than Musar. And there's nothing wrong. And if you want to be a Baal Musar, you want to follow Derech Musar, follow that approach. Don't follow the approach of Chassidus. But to all hold hands and say, we're all buddies, we're all together. Yeah, of course we're all together in practice, Abbas Yisrael. But in Shita of understanding, and there are different approaches. And it's a very important thing because when you raise your children, we're, older, Velvel still has some children to raise, but you know what I'm saying? The grandchildren, these things make a difference. How here in Borough Park, right? What did my girls hear from the neighbors? Oh, they're a goy. They're a goy. They're not a goy. They don't keep Shabbos. They're not a goy. But that's the common language. That's the common, and it's so erroneous. And they don't even really mean it. But it's like they're a goy. What do you mean they're a goy? They're not a goy. They're a yid. They have a neshama, right? So are you mechanech your kids? Like, do you educate your kids and grandkids in such a way? Or do you say, look, they're not keeping Shabbos yet. You bring them in, be mekar of them, let them come see your Shabbos, let them fabring, let them have a good time, let them feel good. That's another style. And some will say, no, there's no room for that. It's like, they always said that the Satmar Rebbe and the Bavar would say, what the Lubavitcher Rebbe could do, we can't do. We can do other things. But for that, you have to go to Lubavitch. Rabbi Riskin was a Hamarafu Shlema for today of Efrat, but he was at the Lincoln Center, Lincoln Square for many years, Lincoln Square school. He sent some people that are today, already grandfathers to Chabad. I know some of them. And he said, for what you need, I and my shul don't address. We at that time, talking about 1970s, you need Chabad for that, So it's important to know that differences doesn't mean bad. Difference means difference. Chevra, we'll see everyone tomorrow. Those that are flying or coming and going, be safe. If you're around, give me a buzz, and if we can get together, it'll be wonderful. Have a great day, everyone. Shalom.
Thank you very much. See you. I'm still.
Sei gesund, Hatzlocha Rabba, and everything. Bye-bye. Take care.